Hi, this is Mr. Bledsoe, and in this video we're going to look at a visual model for dividing fractions by fractions, which means both our dividend and our divisor are going to be fractions. And once again, we're going to think about division as repeated subtraction. So let's take a look at this division problem. 4/5 divided by 1/4. And let's ask the same question we've asked before in other division problems. How many times do I have to subtract 1/4 from 4/5 before I get down to 0? Now, since one of our fractions is in fifths and one is in fourths, we need to be able to represent fifths and fourths at the same time. So here's what we're going to do. I'm going to make a box that's 4 units by 5 units. And this box is going to represent one whole. All right. Now notice that each one of these groups here represents 1/5 of the whole box. All right. Each one of those little vertical strips represents 1/5. I've got 5 of them, so each individual one represents 1/5. If I draw another 4 by 5 box right here, notice if I divide this box up like this, each one of these horizontal groups of boxes represents 1/4. So this box here, this is what we're going to use to represent our 4/5, and this is going to represent 1/4. All right. Now let's use a little bit of color here. So 4/5 is going to be, there's 1/5, there's 2/5, there's 3/5, and there's 4/5. All right, so there's my 4/5 in green. 1/4 of a whole is that. That's 1/4. So here I've got 4/5 divided by 1/4. So 4/5 divided by 1/4 means how many 1/4 can I subtract out of 4/5? Well, since these 5 blue boxes represent 1/4 of a whole, I want to start subtracting out groups of 5 boxes from my 4/5, from my green boxes. Okay, so let's do that. 5 of these I want to subtract out. So here's 5 of those boxes. So there's 1/4, one group of 1/4 that I'm going to subtract out. Let's see, I need another group of 5 boxes to subtract out a second 1/4. So 1, 2, 3. So here is a second 1/4 that I'm going to subtract out. And let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's a third group of 1/4 that I'm going to subtract out. So I can see my answer is going to be 4/5 divided by 1/4 is 3 and something. And again, here's this leftover part, that one box right there, that I still need to subtract out to get down to 0. So I have this one remaining small box that I want to subtract out, and I remember I have to express it as a part of 1/4. 1/4 is my divisor. So if I want to express this one small block as a part of these 5 blocks, well, that's one block out of 5 blocks, and that's my remainder. That's how I'm going to express my remainder. So the answer to my division problem, 4/5 divided by 1/4, is 3 and 1/5. And again, I can check my work by doing my multiplication. If 4/5 divided by 1/4 is 3 and 1/5, well then 3 and 1/5 times 1/4 should be equal to 4/5. Well, let's check and see if it is. So 3 and 1/5 times 1/4, that's going to be, let's see, 3 times 5 is 15, plus 1 is 16, so that's 16/5 times 1/4. 16 times 1 is 16, 5 times 4 is 20, and I see that I can divide out a 4 from both my numerator and my denominator. So 16 divided by 4 is 4, 20 divided by 4 is 5, and yes, I've done my division correctly. Now, in this example that we just did, our divisor was smaller than our dividend, right? 1/4 is smaller than 4/5. So when we ask how many 1/4 can we subtract from 4/5, our answer was 3 and something. Well, what happens if we do a division problem in which our divisor is larger than our dividend? Well, let's try it. Let's do this division problem. 1/4 divided by 4/5. Now, since our dividend and divisor are the same numbers we had in the first example, we're going to use the same 4x5 grid that we used before. Although this time our dividend is 1/4 and our divisor is 4/5. And our question is going to be how many 4/5 can we subtract from 1/4? Well, let's color in our boxes again like we did before. So if my question is how many of these 4/5 represented by my green boxes can I subtract out of 1/4, which is represented by my blue boxes? Well, I'm tempted to say I can't subtract any. My divisor's too big. Well, it's actually maybe a little more accurate to say that I can't subtract out an entire 4/5 from my 1/4. I can only subtract out a part of 4/5. So my answer then is going to be a fraction. Okay, well, what's my fraction going to be? That is, what part of 4/5 is 1/4? Remember, I want to express my 1/4 as a part of my divisor. Well, let's see. In my 1/4, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 boxes out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, out of 16 boxes. So if I express 1/4 as a part of 4/5, then that's going to be 5/16. So my answer then is 1/4 divided by 4/5 is 5/16. Again, let's check it as we've done before. If 1/4 divided by 4/5 is 5/16, then 5/16 times 4/5 should be equal to 1/4. Well, is it? Well, let's find out. 5/16 times 4/5. I multiply my numerators. 5 times 4 is 20. I multiply my denominators, and that's equal to 80. And I can see that I have a common factor for numerator and denominator of 20. 20 goes into 20 one time. 20 goes into 80 4 times, and yes, I've done my division problem correctly.